to the Real Ram fam. On my channel, I intend to provide you with a safe platform to discuss the intersections of your entire being, to be able to be comfortable in your own skin, in mission or position. There is no one like you, and we all have a purpose and message. I, for one, am a black woman, mother of four, a military veteran, and a wife, and a social worker, just to name a few. From my channel, I hope that you learn more about military families and social workers. Three of the social work values are my aim in each video: importance of human relationships, dignity and worth of the person, and social justice. No matter what you initially think when you hear social worker, there is more to the profession. Trust me. Stay locked in by subscribing to the channel, and be sure that you hit that notifications bell so you don't miss any new uploads. Without further ado, on to today's episode. What's up, Real Ram fam? So tonight I got a special guest for us in the house, a rarity. We're gonna represent because representation matters. It's been a while since I've gone live with you. But first of all, as you know, let's just check in, see how y'all doing. I hope y'all had a good week. It's Saturday, we ended up my Sabbath, rested. I was busy. I was tired, but we're gonna work that all out. There's been some shootings going on in the world, some unnecessary losses that we've dealt with. I hope everyone can rest in peace, that the families are at peace, and that eventually will truly put an end to this gun violence, that the laws will be written the way that they need to be. And most importantly, I came across this information. We're going to go back. That Carolyn Bryant, there still is that warrant out for that. We need to go ahead and we need to get her locked up because we lost a child for no reason based off of a lie. So that warrant is still out. She can go to jail, 80 years old or not. She's trying to write a book, trying to make some money. She can go to jail because Black Lives Matter. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So we're going to reel it back in, but don't never forget. So today we got with us, like I said, representation matters. We have a Black male nurse today. How many times do you hear that in one sentence together? So I met him here in DC. I just was going to go get me some lunch. I walked outside and there was the nurses protesting. And I saw him. I posted it on IG. If you hadn't seen it, he had on the most beautiful, powerful shirt. I had to take a picture, had to talk to him after that. So, got Mr. Ainsley. So, Mr. Ainsley, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Ainsley. I am an RN here in Tennessee. I work in the med-surg ICU. Started off, actually, I've done time in the emergency room. I've done time in home health care, transitioned to floor nursing, onto in med-surg floor nursing. And then after that, transitioned to the ICU. Worked through the pandemic, handled in the COVID ICU unit. And now that COVID's trending back down, I'm back in the regular med-surg ICU as of right now.
All right. So, got to ask you the question that I ask all my guests. Mm-hmm. And first, let me not be remiss and say thank you for coming on today. So, first of all, where were you born? Where are you from originally?
I'm originally born in Brooklyn, New York, New York City. Born in Kings County Hospital. So that's where I'm originally from. My family, however, is my older, anyone before me, my younger brother, he's born in New York as well. But any of my elder siblings were born in Trinidad. So, we're across the islands.
All right. With all that being said, I don't think you gave it away, but what is your birth order?
My birth order? Mm-hmm. So as in
Oldest, the middle, the baby.
I am technically because I'm the fourth of five.
With a
So
five.
I
Okay.
was the youngest until I was 8, and that's when my younger brother was born. So kind of messed that up for
Yeah.
me.
My second son probably like feels the same way. Okay, that's kind of junky. That's not what I want you to see. But I can put this here. Okay, so can you see this?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so this is the description of the birth orders. So I guess you would be you would probably be right here, the middle born. Does these characteristics describe you? Do you think that that's accurate for you?
Hmm. In some points, uh, in some parts, yes, and in some parts, no.
Which one? See, I am my mother's only child, and that's how I was raised. So a lot of this it definitely is me. Like,
Okay.
yeah. Which ones do you not agree with?
Under the middleborn, what I do not agree with per se is the people pleaser, because
Mm,
I definitely am not. I just no. Um, I'm not too social, honestly. Even though it's odd that I have like social media and I have
mm,
like a YouTube channel and things of that sort, but yet I'm not. I'm more considered antisocial. I'm usually home a lot, and where if
mhm.
I'm got downtime, I'm usually home. I don't tend to intermingle too much because there's always a bunch of drama out there. So I try to stay out of it.
Yeah. So it might actually that might just be an introvert. You might just be an introvert.
Hmm. Definitely an introvert.
Yeah.
But yet I've performed in choruses and things like that, so I have that extroverted side that I can pull out. But then
Mhm.
even when we're there and after we sing and everything, everybody's like, "Oh, let's go out," and I'm like, "No, I'm going." No.
A little too much extra.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, let's go ahead and just take us down your journey of how you got started in nursing and why.
All right. Well, so my journey into healthcare actually began from in yeah, and just in healthcare in general. Just it began from the instilling from my grandfather. He is the one who I was named after. And apparently, which I didn't realize it, but I've always wanted to become someone in the medical profession. I was a doctor at one point, and and it was always a doctor, then a policeman, then a fireman. I wanted to be all three. But then I've learned I couldn't be all three of those. So I pulled off of the um, firefighter. Then I pulled off the policeman. I still wanted to do healthcare. But my mom told me that um, before my grandfather passed away, he called all of us. And I was really young, maybe 3 to 4 years old. And he spoke to each one of us individually, each of them, me and my siblings, and she never asked what he had said, what he had said to each of us. And when she told me that story, I began to remember. Actually, it started to spark something there, and from that point forward, which no one understood, is that I started speaking about going into the healthcare field, and um, from that she wondered whether or not if I was actually going to if I truly understood what he was telling me. But whenever he was actually done, she told me that he told me to give her the phone, and when I handed her the phone, she put the phone back to me. He said, "No, no, no." He told me to give the phone back to her, and I followed through. So he knew that I understood what he told me. And from that sowing of that seed, he told me to get into the medical field. And that is where my journey truly began. And then I've had a weird life through the whole medical process, because I went to One reason I got to Tennessee in the first place is because my sister, one of my sisters rather, she was in Clarksville, Tennessee. Her husband was in Iraq at the time. So I traveled. She wanted me to come help her with her only child at the moment. She was alone. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll come and help you out for a year until he gets back. Helped her out. Everything was fine. Went back to New York because he made it back home. Everything was good. I went back home to New York, and then when I went to school, they told me that all the courses that I did in Tennessee did not count for the state of New York. So I was going to have to either repeat the year or try to do a bunch of extra coursework to try to catch up with my classmates. So instead, I went back to New York, back to Tennessee, but my sister was leaving for Alaska. So she left for Alaska. I was living on my own from the age of 15. So then I finished high school, and then I said, okay, cool. Now at this point I can leave. But then the little trick up the sleeve of the world, as it shall be, is, oh, now that you graduated from high school in Tennessee, in-state tuition is based off of Tennessee. So I was then again stopped from returning to New York. So there was the option of going to Vanderbilt or going to Lipscomb. They were saying, well, Lipscomb has the Christian Foundation as opposed to Vanderbilt, but they're pretty much similar. So I went to Lipscomb, got my I got my bachelor's in biochemistry there. I was doing pre-med at the time. And then I just started MTSU for my master's in biotechnology. And during that process, I got accepted at Lincoln Memorial University, and that's for the Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine. After I completed a year there, then I had a major legal matter that I had to attend to. So when I pulled out of that school, just temporarily, because I had documentation, I was like, hey, I got to go and handle this for some time. I'll be back. When I went back, they then changed the story and said, oh, no, you can come back, but you have to start everything over from scratch, including your prerequisites. So instead of putting all my eggs in one basket, I said, okay, fine. I'll start over from scratch since that's what everybody wants me to do, but I'll always have something as a follow-up plan. So I began, I went through my prereqs again. It was interesting though, because when I went to Pellissippi State, I'm here in Knoxville, I had to do anatomy and physiology. And I cautioned them because I said, I have doctorate level anatomy and physiology. Are you sure you want me to do this? They said, yes, you have to do it since your previous anatomy and physiology is expired. So this makes no sense, but that's fine. As long as this undergrad is, you have like 5 to 6 years or so before it expires. So then you have to retake the course. My professor then would say that he didn't understand why I was in his course because I knew too much. So they made me a supplemental instructor of the course while I was taking the course. So I helped teach the class and took the same tests that they were taking. And so, of course, I made it through there. At the same time, got my CNA license, started working in home health care at the time, then finished through Pellissippi, then started my nursing program. I continued doing home health care at the time, finished my nursing degree, then started my nursing bachelor's online at Austin P, finished that. So now I have my BSN. So that is where I currently am. And that's been my full journey in terms of getting my education. But once I've finished with home health care and I finished with my, I won't say finish, but once you get attached to a lot of your patients, especially in home health care, especially if you've been, I've had a patient that I was taking care of him for 4 years and as his health declined. So when he had passed away, I said, okay, that's enough of working permanent home health care. So I switched that to more of a PRN position, and I started in the hospital and as a floor nurse. And then from that point forward, As time went on, I then transitioned to the med-surg ICU.
Okay. So you mentioned a couple of different types of nursing, in degrees. So can you explain to the people what those are? What is a PRN? What exactly is home health aide? What is you said some other stuff, but just in general, what's the difference? Why work at a clinic versus working in a hospital versus explain nursing to us.
So there's a lot of different aspects, and you have a lot of different, I would say, perks to the different facets of this form of healthcare itself. PRN initially is going to be as needed. That's what it means. So instead of, let's say, if I have a patient that I'm taking care of in home healthcare, I'm set to be there every Monday at 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. Instead of having that one patient all the time, I could say, hey, just let me know if somebody is needed. So instead of me being in their home, that one patient's home, they can say, hey, this other patient over in another city or a few miles down the road or wherever, somebody didn't show up to their shift. They need somebody to be with them. Can you fill in this spot? Cool, I can fill in that spot, and I'll say yes. I'll pick up the shift and I'll stay with the patient, take care of them. So that would save me from having the excessive attachment to that patient, especially if you get too close, and then if they pass away in due time, then that can be rough. Then you have the clinical nurses.
A PRN, isn't that like a practitioner registered nurse, or what does it stand for?
No, it's a verb. It's more of even though it doesn't stand for it, because it doesn't. It's PRN. It's more just as needed. That's what PRN is.
Yeah, I'm glad that you use that regular language for me. Because when you say that, right? Because I swear, like PRN. So in the therapy, right, we have an APRN. So I've looked that up. That's like advanced something registered nurse. So I'm like, how is she filling in for the psychologist? She's not a psychologist. She is a nurse. So dang, what the heck does it mean?
There is the APRN, which is going to be your nurse practitioner. So that is also where my next degree is going towards, actually.
So is it pro-renata? That's what I see right now. I just looked up PRN.
That's how it would actually be in that vernacular, and I would say that would be like, what is it? Latin.
Okay. See, I didn't know that, especially when I see APRN. Okay. All right. Okay. Go ahead. Okay. All right.
So from you have the clinical nurses, however, those individuals, they have set hours. They know they're going to be in the office from 7 a.m. till 4 or 5 o'clock. Offices close down. So people like that because they have their holidays off. They have their set hours. They know overall what they're going to get. People are coming in like, hey, I have a cold, or I have this ailment going on. It's controlled in its sense. There's not as many emergencies per se that's happening there, because if a patient walks in and says, I'm not feeling well, and then they do some vital signs, they're like, this doesn't look too good. You need to get to the ER. And then they send them to the ER because they just are too unstable for the clinic. So clinic is very controlled. It handles very specific things. So that's for individuals that are saying, hey, I know what I can deal with. I can handle people coming in. I'm only seeing them for 15, 20 minutes or so. It's nothing extensive. We just get them taken care of, and then they're moving on. So it's a faster rotation that it's going through. Then, of course, you switch then to the floor nurses. So you go into these hospitals, then you have the individuals that are either in the ER or even on the, let's say if you had a surgery and you go to the hospital and you have to stay there for a couple days. Typically, that's going to be your floor nurses. So if that's if you're not like super critical. Um, those situations you could probably still get up, you can still walk and talk, but they're just monitoring you. But in ER, you're trying to get them stabilized and figure out where they need to go. So ER, you can vary whether or not you're going to be really critical or if you're stable or not. That's they're trying to figure that out. But if you're on the floor, then you're just like, hey, you're here for a couple of days. This was out of whack. We need to watch you for a few days. Or you just had surgery. We're gonna just make sure you're rehabilitated before you go home. And things like that. You have aides that come in, take care of you, and help you out. And just a normal thing. You can talk. That's the big thing. You can talk. You can use the bathroom on your own. Those are the beautiful, easy world. But at the same time, it's easier for the patient per se, but it's in some instances it can actually be harder on the nurse because what they've been doing in a lot of the situations as it is right now is because of the nursing shortage is they are placing too many patients for a nurse to take care of.
Yeah.
And that causes a lot of challenges for medical errors or patients to not be monitored the way they're supposed to be monitored. So sometimes you might need a medication to keep you on track for your recovery. So that's why you're in the hospital, so you can be monitored, so you can get that medication. But if your nurse is being preoccupied taking care of 7 other people, by the time they get to you and you're late, your pain's out of control, and then you're writhing around because you probably had a surgery. Next to know, you tore a stitch open. Next to know, you're bleeding out. You become a critical care patient because the nurse was too busy because they were overstaffed or technically understaffed, and they were given too many patients to take care of. And then you become a critical patient at that point, and that is when you come to me. So the critical patients are those individuals that are in pretty much have much less ability to try to take care of themselves. You are hooked up to so many different wires and cables. We are monitoring every little thing about you. Many people, they are unable to talk. We have a vent tube that's going down their throat to help them breathe. If you need to turn, we are picking you up, turning you over to the side. You need to use the bathroom. We are either putting a bedpan under you. We are like picking you up and getting you sat down onto a commode. You're basically like at the end of the ropes. So it's literally like when you're in my unit, if you say, oh, I want to go somewhere else, we can, like some people, they can say, oh, I'm tired of this hospital. I don't want to be here. You can sign yourself out AMA, who is leaving against medical advice. But if you're in my unit, if you say, oh, I don't want to be here, if you can actually talk, we can say, okay, if you can manage to walk to the door, try it. And you can't. We say, all right, back in the bed, and we'll get taken care of, because you literally cannot take care of yourself at that point. So critical care nurses, they usually do anywhere from 2 to 3 patients per. 3's pushing it sometimes, but sometimes it happens.
Mm-hmm. So how many nurses then should be on one shift?
Depends on the size of the unit. For example, my unit is a 25-bed critical care unit. So we need at
I
least.
lost you.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Okay, you're back. You said yours is a 25 bed.
Yes, mine's a 25-bed unit. So therefore, if we have we need a minimum, it's pushing it with only 10 nurses. Yeah, that's pushing it day. We're struggling when we have 10 and don't let anybody call out. That's bad. But 11 to 12, that keeps us right at the borderline, where we can manage things. But there's many days when we even are seeing, especially in the summertime when people are gone vacations or things like that, especially with how staffing shortages have been and how pay is not sufficient enough for many nurses. They're all leaving the profession with everything going on. We are having days where we're like 8 or 9 nurses, and it is about near impossible to make it through that day.
Mm-hmm. So the protest that you all were in DC for
Mm-hmm.
was about what?
A majority of things. And it's basically, to put it in a major nutshell, it is the situation that we are placed in without the proper support. And what I mean by that, we have, for example, the Deronda case that was going on in Nashville. This was a nurse that unfortunately made a terrible accident and caused a patient to die. She administered the wrong medication. And so, of course, there's a question which I won't be going into all the detail on because I wasn't there. There's so many he says, she says, and there's so many things that they're going through. But unless you were there, unless you're practicing, and there's so much stuff, you won't really be able to say, would I have done that? Because there's things I would look for. But again, at my hospital currently, the one I'm in, we have a lot of safety nets to where, in terms of scanning and things like that. Apparently, at that hospital where she was at, there was not a scanner. They didn't have to technically scan all these things. They just had to do overrides for even things as simple as a bag of saline. So she did the override, not really thinking how the medication was spelled because there's 2 names for the medication. So she typed in the wrong one by mistake, but she didn't look at the vial, whatever, however that happened, mixed the wrong medication, gave it to the patient. Patient wasn't monitored. They died. She reported herself, which was great. She reported herself. She lost her license, unfortunately. And it was all handled. But then when this whole case came up, it's all just her. But yet, is the hospital fined for not having this proper safety nets? Is the hospital fined because she had multiple patients that she was taking care of, plus someone else that she's teaching at that point in time? Is other people that is also in the midst of that situation, that where the patient's not being monitored, but yet it's just a nurse's duty, even though if we take a patient to a scanner, we have the MRI techs that are handling the situation. It's not like I'm running the MRI scanner. However, it's for us to monitor the patient, even though we're not in the room. How is that supposed to happen? But yet it falls on us because we are the ones taking care of them. And this is where a lot of nurses are getting frustrated because the challenge is coming to the point where there's more that's continuously being expected of us. And yet there is a drop of the number of nurses in the profession due to the fact that they are not being paid adequately. They are not, especially for the type of staffing issues we're having. But honestly, the reason we're having staffing issues is because they're not getting paid enough. If you pay them more, they'll be there. And if they're there, we don't have any staffing issues. No staffing issues, less medical errors. Simple. But the way how it will work is there are how would I say it? It's ratio requirements in hospitals. And they will say the hospitals are operating based off of a certain type of criteria to where they don't want to pay extra. So if you have, I don't know, 12, 13, let's say you have 15 nurses and you see that actually scheduled, they say, well, even if you have 25 patients, you need to send some people home because that's just too many nurses. But we should say, no, that's good because we have enough people to, if I have to run this patient down off the unit because they have to have an emergency scan, especially if you're in the unit, a lot of scans are being done. You leave the floor, you have someone else that can watch, someone else credible that can watch your other patient. But they don't see it that way. They say, no, we need to send those other people home because there's too many nurses here that day. Okay, so then you send them home, and then all of a sudden the ER is backed up with critical patients, and then they're sent to us, and then we are scrambling to try to get them taken care of. Oh, but let make sure that there's not an error that happens too, because we should be able to handle that. Okay, then as a nurse, what many people don't, and I want to make sure I also try to break this. There's a, it's irritating at times, but it's a pet peeve, definitely. um, I've had where patients, a lot of my patients, they can understand how I communicate with them, and sometimes I tell them things. I'm like, hey, this is what's going on, but we'll wait for the doctor to come and tell you this. There's sometimes where you explain things to a family, and then they say, oh, they want to hear it from the doctor.
Yeah.
They want you to berate the doctor, constantly calling them, saying, hey, they want you to talk to you about this or that. The doctor finally comes, irritated, and then because they were already there earlier, they explain exactly what I would have explained already. And they're like, and then the family's like, oh, thank you so much for explaining it. When the doctor used the exact same words that you told the doctor to say. Because we would tell the doctor what to say. They want to know this. I already explained this, this, this. And then the doctor's like, okay, fine. They go in and they say the exact same thing, and the family's okay.
Yeah.
But what many people don't understand is that your nurse is your point of contact between everyone. And which is the oddest thing, especially with how our pay rate is, because people are wondering, like, oh, you can. I have a friend that works in T-Mobile, and nothing against the T-Mobile representative, nothing at all, but works at T-Mobile and makes more than me, even though I am a nurse taking care of someone's life. He works in taking care of cell phones, and making sure people are buying these things. And I'm like, I used to work in a cell phone industry at US Cellular, and in the retention department, I made more than I made as a nurse when I started off, which made no sense. But the nurse is your point of contact between every single department, to where it all falls on that nurse. If there is you send some lab work down, and it comes back positive for something. Let's just say it's a patient has a new bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. The lab calls you and says this is a critical result, and they tell it to the nurse, and we have 30 minutes maximum rather, to have it reported that we communicated with the doctor and received new orders. When I'm like, so I'm not allowed to put in the orders.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get this to the doctor, but the lab doesn't call the doctor to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
They call me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to know this, and I have to get a hold of the doctor, who's busy doing something. I'm trying to find them while I have other patients to take care of, but yeah, I'm on a time limit. Okay, there's that. Then you have a pharmacist that might put in a medication for the patient. I have to intervene and say, okay, is this compatible? Can I actually run this? Can I not run this? Okay, then the doctor puts in an order, and if they both put it in, and then I have to double check and say, wait, the patient's allergic to this. I can't give this, but they ordered this. But you have to then call them again, say, hey, you ordered this, but they say there's possible allergy. Oh, is it fine? Is it not fine? And then so you are their point of contact between every single department, that you must know everything. But when a family member walks in and tells you that you don't know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
pushes me beyond the edge, because I know what I'm talking about for a reason.
Yep. Thanks for that knowledge, right? Because that was the next thing we were going to talk about, is like the misconceptions. But everything you just described, that was my life as an admin in the Air Force. But all of the lack of support and resources and all, that's government. Like, that's how it is for all of us in the military. And I am experiencing that now, in therapy. So I don't know about other people's jobs. Like you're saying, the cellular phone guy. I don't know how it is for them, but it seems like all of us that are in some type of medical care and emergency first responders, like we're all dealing with the same problem. It may not, it may not come out the same, but it's the same thing. It's the shortages of money, or the money isn't being spent correctly or dispersed correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Have these requirements that people don't understand. It looks easy, but you do not understand how this goes. So, yeah, yeah, I that's my pet peeve too. Like I don't like that stuff either. So we'll transition straight into the misconceptions,
Mm-hmm.
and then along with that, because you said when the doctor says it this way, how is it also when you, the male nurse, says something versus the female nurse? So if you can touch both of those.
So if when the doctor goes in, there's many a times where they just say the exact same thing. And honestly, from my perspective, it actually happens a lot less than my female counterparts. I will be honest with that. When I walk into most of my patients' rooms, they initially assume I'm their doctor. When I'm speaking with them, and part of me wonders though is if it's based upon what I do or how I communicate,
Okay.
because I have a personality to where, and I know this about myself, to where I speak more on a common ground level. I try to speak on their level and I try to explain everything in which is going on. I'm not, I, a lot of nurses, and part of the whole nurses training, they go through like, you go in, you say, well, the doctor wants this, or here I am to give you this medication. Here they have a list of 12, 13 meds that they give in the morning, and then you're like, well, I'm going to give you this pill which is for this, now I'm going to give you this pill which is for that. I'm like, no, listen, I walk in the room and I say, hey, I'm giving you this. You used to taking these pills? Yes. Okay, we're moving on. I don't have time. We don't have time to go through all of that. You know what you're taking. I know what you're taking. You've been here for 2 or 3 days. We have already been through this. We're not.
Oh, you're talking about like daily, each time
Yeah,
you got to minister to me.
every single day. And I've watched some people go in there and start explaining, and I'm like, what are you doing? You don't know. No. But then I even will speak on just the fact that I communicate with them. Just they're like, if a patient will say, oh, I'm worried about this, and I'll be like, you don't got to worry about that. I just speak with them in just a down to earth level to where they feel more comfortable with me. But then at the same time, I know I probably shouldn't. I don't mind saying this on air or whatever. But there's times when some results come in, and I've had patients that have like a spot in the lung that's probably cancer. They have a family member in the room. So then and they've been watching them the entire time. I pulled the family member out. I was like, hey, come here. And they come out of the room, and I'm like, hey, and I show it to them. I'm like, this is showing up on the scans. Have y'all talked about this yet? And then they're like, nobody's brought this to my attention. I'm like, well, don't tell them that I did, but I'm bringing this to your attention. I will talk to the doctor and I'm going to let them know that they need to bring this up. But just so you know, is that I'm telling you that the doctor needs to bring this up. And they're like, okay, thank you so much. And when they get that with me, they get the perfect rapport, and they say they won't say a single word, and they just know that I'm working on it. So I get them because people say that patients don't need to know everything all the time, because sometimes it causes unnecessary stress. And that's why sometimes I bring the family member out, like, hey, did y'all talk about this? And if they knew about it, I'm like, cool, because I don't want to necessarily bring it up and then the patient like starts freaking out, because I'm just like, whoops, my bad. But but and another aspect of that is that when it when I've noticed that it comes, well, some of my female counterparts, it seems as though they're a little bit timid when they do go about those things. Or sometimes some patients, we get a lot of aggressive patients that come at us. But when these type of things go on, I walk into the room and there's this thing called a code green. And if a patient gets super unruly or they're trying to break out or anything like that, we call a code green. And then security has to run up there wherever we are. And they're running out of breath. And they get there like, what's going on? I'm like, I got this. So whenever we have a patient that's getting unruly towards if I hear it and somebody's screaming at one of my fellow nurses, you best believe I walk to that room. I step in that room as a male nurse. I step in and I say, what's going on? You are not going to speak to us in any form or fashion that is less than respectable. We are here to take care of you, but we are not going to grovel to you either. So I have that different aspect.
Yes. Everybody what your shirt said.
Let's see. I think it said, which one was that one? I'm a nurse. My job is to wipe your ass, not kiss it.
Yep. No, I think it was save. Yep. I said, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's the way how it is. I mean, I do not feel that I need to cower to anyone in my job. When people come out, they're like, oh, this patient the family member comes out all the time. They're like, they need this. I'm like, are they dying right now? Because somebody else is dying. So they're fine. Just go back in your room. You use your call light. We'll be in there when we can. They're okay. But then there's times where they're the ones that try to become super aggressive. And you're starting to hear actually a little bit more. If you run some checks on some searches and things, you'll see there's many times nurses are getting kicked. And honestly, with the higher female population in nurses, higher female population of nurses in itself, that means there's a higher likelihood that they are pregnant. So imagine how many pregnant nurses are getting kicked by unruly patients. How many are in danger of losing their children? I have a few nurses that I'm working with right now that are pregnant. When certain things are going on in a room, I tell them, I'm like, no, back away. They're like, I can handle this. I'm like, I know you can handle this, but you are with child. You are not handling this. I'm going to handle this. And I'll step in. But and I will tell a patient flat out, I don't care if they are confused or if they're not confused. And because if I'm saying if I tell you to put your hand down and you can put it down, you're alert enough to understand what I'm telling you. And I've had a patient once before that was in the middle of screaming for some reason and actually blurted out towards us. He said, I think I'm about to hit you. And I rolled him over, looked him dead in the eye, and said, I promise you, if you raise your hand, I am not one of those nurses. As soon as you raise your hand, that will be the last thing you do. You will be a super critical patient at this point in time.
I think I'm about to hit you. I think I'm about to not let you.
Yeah. I've had family members walk in and try to cause trouble. And while the family member standing right there, I look at somebody else and say, hey, do we have any open beds? They're like, yeah, this bed's open right now. I was like, okay, I'm about to make another patient real quick. And I look at him. Now I'm like, I'm not the one. I am not the one. I will lay you out if I need to, because this whole thing about they try to teach this to where nurses are supposed to push away and try to get away to safety and all this stuff. No, if you are coming to hit us, if you're in the mindset to attack, I need to be in my right mindset to defend. And as a male nurse, I am careful about that, because at the same time, that is where it can easily backfire on me. Because as a male nurse, if that is not even going on, people can say, oh, your tone is harsh to a patient, because as a male, a booming voice, somebody might take it as harsh. But the patient could be laughing with you, but initially somebody's thinking that you're yelling, but you're not. So
hold that thought real quick. We got Mimi. She gonna join us.
All right.
All right. All right, now you can go ahead. I just didn't want her to pop up while you
Oh
were
no,
you were
you're
talking
good.
and you didn't know.
I am so sorry. I apologize for my late entrance.
You're fine.
All right, let's get back to your interesting story.
Well, I
Okay.
would just say, if when people, when even though having the booming voice and patients can, some think that it's actually aggressive, but another time they're like, oh, you all are just playing in the room. Yeah, because I try to have a good time with my patients and things like that. But the moment they switch and try to turn it to an aggressive towards me, then I'm like, listen, even though it's going to look bad on me very quickly because I am a male nurse and they try to do it that way, but nonetheless, I am not going to allow my life to be considered as though I am some type of servant that can be beat on and berated as if I am some type of slave. So I will not allow that to happen. So if somebody is going to do that, I will fire back very quickly. And if they even do it to any of my fellow nurses, I will do that. I even have family coordinators who are very soft spoken and things like that. And families will come out there screaming at them because they're trying to find their family members and they're trying to help them out. And if she calls us and says, hey, the family's trying to do this, I'm like, hold it right there. I'll be right out. And I'll go and I said, all of y'all need to step away from her. Back off, and we will handle this, and you will do this, and you will not do that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or I will have you removed. And be all like, oh, you're going to call security? I'm like, I can turn into security myself, so I'm good. So we can handle this here and now, or we can move on, and then we're done.
I can see that.
And
You
listen
do
to
look
you for
like
that, but
security.
not the other stuff. They got to get the doctor.
After security hits them, you gotta call the doctor back in. Help them.
Oh
But
Lord, this.
so you're a male nurse, and so when you're dealing with a lot of patients, I
Mhm.
heard that you said you had to watch your tones and like you had to change your volume and stuff like that. I
Mhm.
mean, do you feel like that you're changing yourself for the patients on a good term, or how can I say, you're trying to make it a calming situation?
Actually, for me, I've
Mm-hmm.
managed to keep myself in the entire flow. That's something we were talking about, to where I have my own just like personality that is, I'm usually very fun, bubbly, and everything like that. When people hear me get my tone aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
they are like, oh, something's going on, because I will sit down with my patients. I will cut up with them. um if they'll be like, I'll say, hey, what's going on, I'll be your nurse today or something like that, and then later on we're talking, if I'm doing their assessment, I'm like, what happened over here? Like it'll be a scar or something. They're like, man, I fell and I did this, and I'm like, what you doing that for? And I'm just joking around with them. We just shoot the breeze, and they tell me that, and it's instead of going through this, oh, well, tell me if you've fallen in the last 3 months, or now tell me if have you been drinking this. I'm just like, tell me your story. Let's have a
Wow.
conversation. They can tell me their whole story, and I can chart their full assessment later on, because as I get that communication, we're good. And I
Yeah.
can have them express everything. And that's how I use my personality with it. It's the only
That's
times
really nice.
when they try to turn that aggression on to where they don't want to cooperate, then I'm like, okay, if you want to act like this, then I can act that way too. And then I turn that on. So I've actually, what I have vowed to myself is to not change myself for any role, because actually something that I want to do, and we were talking about like the different degrees in which I've attained, and with the amount of years I've worked in healthcare, what a lot of my, especially with the patients that I've got in really close with, especially in home health, is the ones that I can really connect with, and I really spoke on a just a regular basis with them. But there was in my future plans, something that I've been thinking about is that I was thinking to at one point go to CRNA school, but that program requires you to work the program is 3 years long, and you're not allowed to work during the entire program. So the challenge with your nursing license is that after 2 years, if you don't practice, you lose your nursing license. CRNA school is already difficult enough. So let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that during your third year, some emergency happens in life that you pull out of the CRNA school, that you have to go take care of family or something like that. At that moment, you have just lost everything.
Oh wow.
And that is something that I've contemplated because of what happened at LMU when they tried to have me to start over and do everything again. I said, there's no longer am I going to put everything all my eggs in one basket. So then, as working through healthcare all these years, one thing that I have strived to attain towards the future is, if I obtain my nurse practitioner license, I want to open my own practice, and I want to start a practice that opens up on the weekends as well. So that way, instead of having this, because one thing we also got to really think about the disparities that's going on between African American women, anybody that are a lower social class or things like that. If you only have access to healthcare Monday through Friday, and you can only work Monday through Friday, you won't take off work because you don't want to lose that money. And
So true.
so therefore, if you can only go to the hospital in the ER on the weekend where you have to pay extra money to go, you won't go. So therefore, the time when you are forced into the ER is when you're really bad off, and then you are paying even more, and then you've also still lost your job because you now have let that condition, which was simple, to get worse. So what
Right.
I want to do is have different physicians or colleagues or whatever limited hours on the weekend, and somebody says, hey, I really need to set up an appointment, I will say, okay, cool, we set up an appointment, but it will be with this physician or that physician, physician A, physician B, or etc. on Saturday, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., or whatever. Can you make it? They will make it. We can be open, limited hours, boom, and accommodate that to where healthcare does not take vacations, but yet
Wow.
we have created a system to where healthcare is taking vacations, and it's causing an issue across the board. And that is where my personality is coming into play, to where I want to never lose that and never fall into that system. And I will keep my mindset and keep what I have aspired for and develop that in the future.
So,
Yeah.
can I ask one more question? What is going on with all the doctors, like either quitting or changing their role in like the hospital settings?
That is more directed towards what they are truly wanting to do. I've actually have a few physicians that have joined us, but they were only placed there temporarily, and they've wanted to just do like procedures or things like that. But
Okay.
it really just depends on where, because honestly, a lot of people aren't really getting into healthcare any longer, because they are seeing how much debt they're going into,
Mm-hmm.
and then the amount of hours that are placed on them. And sometimes I have a nurse practitioner that was working with a physician who usually had patients in hospital a lot longer than what the agency will say, hey, this patient needs to be out of here by this point. Why are they not out of here? Case managers are struggling on it, the nurse practitioners are struggling on it, but the doctor's like, no, they need this. But so then they are overworked with so many patients in there that they're working 15, 16 hours a day, and then they're just like, they just can't keep that up. So they are finally pulling out to where they can have their set hours. And that's where it's mainly going towards, is that the set hours. If people not having their set hours, many times when I'm at work, I'm working about 14, 15 hours, usually between 13 to 14 hours a day. And when I'm actually going to work, and when I was having, during especially COVID times, I was doing that about 5 days a week. That was literally draining my soul. But I was like, we need people here, and we need to have the staffing. So physicians are also having that drain pulled on them. And then when they're constantly trying these things, and then they're having multiple conversations with families like, hey, this isn't going well. This is that. This is this. This is that. And then families constantly keeping things going and going and going. They're getting burnout. Everywhere is getting just complete, total burnout. And
That's
nothing.
what I thought.
Mhm.
There was a lot of burnouts with the doctors, you know, and I understand. I could definitely understand that, because you guys have been really overworked with COVID, and then, like, you know, it seemed like you don't have a.
That was just her, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
I got bad connection, so I just wanted to make sure it wasn't me. Guess we'll get it when she come back.
Yeah.
You should really be trying to make you guys a higher priority, because
Yeah.
you guys have to do this. You have to say, you know, it's like we need you guys. It's a need that we need you guys. So, like, I understand you guys being burnt out, and that's why I said, like, it's sad that, you know, everybody's just, when COVID was going on, it was like, oh, thank you, but now it's like back to normal, and I hate that for you guys. I really do.
Yep.
Well, speaking of what type of nurse and his personality, we're gonna highlight what is on the thumbnail. Villafana or Villafana.
Both, either or. If it's because it is Venezuelan, so it's Villafana.
Roll those L's, Mimi. In April, although this thing was posted in June, but he won in April. He was the Daisy winner at his hospital, which is Fort Sanders Regional Medical Center. So the Daisy winner is, okay, I'm gonna read it here. It is a registered nurse. He is a registered nurse in the Med-Surg ICU, and he was nominated by a patient for his heartfelt sincerity and visible love for his job. During an extended stay at Fort Sanders Regional Medical Center, Ainsley's nominator noted how he went above and beyond his duties to ensure they were being cared for in every possible way. Thank you, Ainsley, for your dedication and passion for patient care, which we heard about. He shared his story. Well, not that particular person, but he shared his story of how he cares for his people all the time.
Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
When Mimi was asking you a question about, like, losing yourself, that made me think about just being a Black man, period. So in your network of friends, but not your nurses, but just all of the friends, is it still just the same, that you all are still dealing with the same issues being Black men, wherever someone is thinking that you are too aggressive, or where people would rather hear it from the white man, or you're being, like you were saying, you were being protective of your female nurses, but for a specific reason, because they're pregnant. So are you all dealing with this, like, no matter what your career field?
Absolutely. Yes. I will definitely say that. Because but then I say absolutely, but then there's a slight hesitation with it. And the reason I have a slight hesitation is because even in my friends that I've grown up with and things like that, and that I've met along my years, it's like, it depends on the person, because there are some individuals, unfortunately, that try to use our race as a reason for them to act a certain way so they can be targeted, so they can fight, to cause it to become an issue. And I'm like, you don't need to do this. You don't need to act a certain way to just cause this attention. How about we act sensible And they're like, oh, well, you're just acting white. There is no such thing
What?
as acting white. I
You go
guess.
through that a lot because of the way we talk.
Uh, I'm like, just because I'm educated and I'm not
Right.
necessarily speaking with some ebonics or some type of slang, that does not mean
Exactly.
that I am speaking white. That really upsets me. And I'm just like, no, that's not how this works.
Right.
However, in that same notion, as even when I'm speaking about travel nursing, and then even as I'm speaking or as I've been thinking about places where I'm moving to and things, I've like had a desire for many years to move to, for example, to Texas. However, as the time has gone on, it's been on my number one list, but then I have to always watch and see what's going on in Texas right now. How safe is it for me to go there? Can I actually work there safely? And before everything's just going to be targeted towards me in some form or fashion. Um, I contact friends and I say, hey, tell me, where is it safe? They actually can tell me. They can say north of this area or west of this area, don't go there because it's not that safe, unfortunately. I'm like, okay, cool. Thank you for letting me know. But then when things pop up on the news and I'm like, do I want to go there? Is it safe to go there? And then that goes into the workforce, is because there was even I know for a fact, and it actually, I've had it from my own experience, to where, and I'm not sure if somebody was just having, trying to do something vindictive. I'm not 100% sure, but it was about a year ago or so. In the unit, we were already in, because we had changed building and stuff. So I was already in that building, and there was this anonymous report that I was being mean towards a patient. And this patient, however, back when I used to work on the regular floor, I took care of that patient for years. That patient was on my Facebook. I know that patient. So it was just like, what? Okay. But they immediately sent me home that same day when they came in. They came in, they were like, hey, this is what a report is going on. We have to run an investigation. I was like, okay. Sent me home. Luckily I didn't even have to work for the next few days, but they were running their report. And then of course the weekend hit and I wasn't working that weekend. Then I didn't have to be working until like that Wednesday. They called me the Tuesday, and I'm wondering, like, do I even have a job? What in the world is going on? And I was still working at home health as well. So I was like, well, do I need to pick up shifts at home health? What in the world's going on? They called me Tuesday and said, hey, yeah, we finished the report. Nothing came out of it. We couldn't find any issues. We've gone to other floors and verified your work ethic, all this different type of stuff. No issues. So everything is fine. I'm like, okay, but nobody has an idea of who did the report or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And from that point forward, I was always watching what was happening. And I'm like, I'm seeing who or is trying to do something or whatnot. But then I'll put it out there. I even currently am dealing with going to legal suits for someone sexually harassing me at work.
Wow.
A fellow employee who works the night shift sexually harassing me. I have the proof. They put even a tracker on my vehicle to try to locate me. I'm calling the police. They are dragging their feet. I speak with my HR department. The individual still works there. When I just had a accusation and I was sent home.
But they're not Black, right?
That is correct.
Oh, okay.
And that was my final straw when I said I'm switching to.
Even if they weren't Black, I had the same situation, and because they were, what is it called, Mason? The Mason group of Black people, they like to stick together, even if you are Black. So
Yep.
that's another issue. Like, I understand that yours was white, but mine was a black man, and it was crazy.
Wow.
And because he was Mason, and then my boss was Mason, and then my supervisor was a Mason, and they all stuck
Wow.
together.
Wow.
I have no rebuttal for that. There's Freemasons in my life, but
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just that when it comes to right and wrong, you can't stick by somebody just because they're part of your group, or
Mhm.
Caucasians, or even whatever. If they're
Right.
wrong, they're wrong. You know.
Mhm.
well, it has been over an hour, so I do not want to keep him. There's so much we can talk about, right? Because all of the
Yes.
intersections that we have, but I definitely would like to have you back and talk about your channel and talk about the other works that you do. You can come back anytime, anytime.
Will do.
I won't
Don't
be late next time. I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
you might not be late next time.
I hope not. This baby is
Um,
kicking my butt right now, so no, I can't promise anything.
go ahead and throw out your plugs, how people can find you. I'm still gonna put it in the description,
Okay.
but whatever you would like people to know, and I'm gonna type it in here where people can find you.
Well, people can always easily find me on YouTube, which is just Jokaze, or if you want to find me on Instagram or what's that other one? TikTok now. It's Jokaze11. So that is my handle there. And Facebook, find me. I go by my middle name, Jokaze Villafana.
I thought I could type that. Okay, I think that's what you said. Can you see that? Oh no, you can't see that because I didn't put it up here.
Oh no. So my TikTok is Jokaze11. Raikaz. That's all under my name.
Yeah, it's under his name. I see it.
Is it?
Yeah.
See, he said. Why Causey? See, I didn't hear no R.
R-A.
That's that island.
Jokaze.
That's that island. I couldn't hear it. Okay, so I'm gonna ask. Wait, you got anything you want to say maybe before we end?
Nope, you're good. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so if you were serving us breakfast, sir, would it be pancakes or would it be waffles?
What kind of a day is it?
It's the weekend. On the weekend, we come over, you serving breakfast.
Okay, well, if you're coming over to my place, so if you're coming over to my place, we're doing waffles. If we're going out and you out and I'm serving something, it's going to be chocolate chip pancakes.
Okay. All right then. Well, I greatly appreciated your time today. Anybody that comes and views this later on, please make sure you hit him up. Look into nursing. Appreciate your nurses.
Oh yeah.
Do not disrespect. Nurses is more, as he explained, like their jobs is outlandish, like the stuff that they do that the doctors do not do. Okay, the doctors may have this particular degree. It's just like, let's go back to my other purpose. It's just like those of us in the military. The enlisted people are we're the ones who do everything. It's us, it's the enlisted people. The officer just comes in and just says, okay, go do it. No, it's the enlisted folks. It's the nurses. So appreciate your nurses. Don't try to take advantage. And with that, I'm out. I think I'm out. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I would like to thank my guests for joining me, or simply thank you for watching the pre-recorded episode. No matter what your birth order is, how you self-identify, and whether you like pancakes or waffles. If this is the first time you're hearing it today, I want you to know that you are loved. You were put here for a purpose that only you can fulfill. Until next time, take care of yourself. Be sure that you like and share the videos, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notifications bell. This is Real Ram out.